Did you know that they make tornado-proof RVs?
No, I didn't know that.
You didn't?
No.
Oh.
Really?
Well, okay. Well, they really don't. But ours survived. We're in it right now. It's amazing.
So here's what happened.
Welcome to the Wandering RV Show, your source for our stories
Our screw-ups.
and our successes living the full-time RV life. I'm Kara, your host, the Wandering RV Babe, and this is my driver, Ryan.
Howdy!
Did you know we live in a tornado-proof RV? It's great. It's awesome. We really don't. In this episode, we're breaking down the craziest thing that has ever happened to us while doing this full-time RV life, what we learned from it, and how you can avoid it in the future. If you're a podcast listener or you follow us on YouTube, you may have noticed that we took a little bit of a hiatus from the show this last year.
Yeah, it got a little bit crazy, starting with me injuring my back in May.
And then the suspension broke on the RV, and we had some pretty major repairs that we had to kind of get done and Band-Aid fix it on our way back to Florida.
And then we got hit by a tornado.
But first, make sure you hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, because we're back, baby.
Real quick, Kara, do you want to go see Star Wars?
Is there a new one coming out?
Yes.
I mean, is this like a good Star Wars where we meet like Luke and Leia and we get like full on really cool, crazy, scary Darth Vader? Or is this like Mary Poppins Leia flying through the sky and Jar Jar Binks kind of Star Wars? Because my answer's gonna vary depending on what your answer is.
My answer is it's a Star Wars parody.
Game on. I'm there. I'm good.
You jumped on too quickly, unfortunately.
Oh!
Because the last qualifier might, I don't know, it might send you over the edge.
All right, well, what is the last qualifier then?
Burlesque.
I can get behind that.
There's one in Orlando.
Is there really?
Yes. I want to go see it.
I mean, I can make for some fun content. Just saying.
Okay, now we got to get into the tornado. What happened? Why were we in it? And why didn't we leave, I guess?
Yeah, why didn't we leave? I think that's probably the number one question people ask, because we got hit by the tornado that was part of the string of like 30-something tornadoes that popped up when Hurricane Milton was coming through Florida, and we were in Southeast Florida when it hit.
Yeah, so the reason we didn't leave, I alluded to it a little bit maybe you alluded to it at the beginning. Mm-hmm. We broke our suspension, and we had to have some repair work done. So all of that,
And you had to have some repair work done too.
Yes, the RV needed to go in the shop, I needed to go in the shop. It was very important.
Everybody needed to go in the shop.
I don't know where to go with that. Okay, episode done. Bye, guys.
Okay, well, let's hit on the real reason why we didn't leave. As Ryan mentioned before, we had a lot of challenges. We weren't sure if we could make it back out of Florida, because we would have to pass right through the eye of that tornado, or the eye of the hurricane.
It's the eye of the tiger.
Y'all, this is what I deal with every single day. I don't understand. I don't know.
It's not very nice of you to say.
We didn't know if we would get stranded trying to get back out of the way. And the place that we were in was actually accepting evacuees in. We were not in an evacuation zone. And so we were concerned we would get stranded in the middle of the road. There were fuel shortages. There were traffic issues. And getting out in time was going to be a little sketchy, especially with all of the other challenges that we had going on at the time.
Yeah, and so part of that is the fact that the suspension was recently damaged. We didn't know how well of a repair job we got. The mobile RV tech
that repaired it to begin with
was a little, I don't know. He was not sure that I really truly trusted everything he said and did.
Yeah.
But because of the way it broke, we were concerned about the other side. We were concerned about the work that he did, and our tires were getting bald, and there were some other things going on. Once we got here, it was like, okay, well, if we leave, we're leaving the trailer. And this trailer ain't surviving, if it gets really bad. But then we saw it shift, and it started to shift north of us, and we were only anticipating 65 mile per hour winds. That was it, which is 100% tolerable in the RV, even as a side wind. Believe me, I've tested. We were in it.
We were, yeah.
No,
we know.
We did a bunch of research. We knew what was supposed to be happening. The problem was the unprecedented amount of tornadoes.
Yeah, and so we knew the day of that they were calling for some tornadoes, and, you know, most people were expecting kind of small water spouts, things like that, which, don't knock those. If you're in an RV, a tornado is a tornado is a tornado. So we were...
Is a tornado a tornado?
It is. It is. It
Really?
is, especially when you're in an RV, because it's like, you know, just a box of cardboard and plywood and aluminum. That is what an RV is. So
There's a steel frame.
there is a steel frame, and well, in most cases. Um,
Sorry, I'm checking to see where my dog was, so I didn't want to like step.
We didn't
on,
wanna step
I didn't
on
wanna,
her?
I was about to step back, and I was afraid I was going to step on her, and so I was trying to be nice because I got to step back.
There we go. But by the time that they were talking about, hey, we could see some extra tornado activity today, we were already, you know, kind of
Committed.
set and committed. But the thing is that we could have gone a little further south. We talked about going a little further south on the morning of.
Yeah.
But
We couldn't find a campground that I could say 100% had an actual like tornado shelter. They
Exactly.
had like bathhouses, and they said that they were, you know, fairly safe, but no, like where we were at, we had a solid like cinder block style bathhouse, and it survived the tornado. I mean, it literally hit the bathhouse and tore the roof off on a
Part of it.
part of it that wasn't made of cinder block, and the part that was made of cinder block was
fine.
perfectly safe.
Exactly. And that's something that you can't overlook, especially if you're going to be RVing in the South or anywhere where there's tornadic activity.
Tornadic.
I know, I used a
That
really
was
big
really
vocabulary.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's vocabulary is on point today.
That 8th grade education is really doing you well today.
It is. I think it's actually 6th grade education, but you know, no big deal. Anyway, we're from Texas originally. We know what tornadoes look like. We know how bad they can be. And so we always look for campgrounds that have tornado shelters. Most of the time it's going to be a bathhouse or a laundry room or something like that. But we look for shelters just in case, because you never know when those suckers See, I was doing good with words. Now, not so much. You never know when those suckers can crop up. Oh my gosh. What is the matter with... You never know when a tornado's gonna hit. There we go. So that's why we didn't leave. Some of you are still gonna say, you should have gotten out of there, you should have done this, you should have done that. Whatever. It is what it is. But we didn't. We stayed in the storm shelter during the tornado and during the hurricane itself. We were in there for like 18 hours. It was not great.
What I want to say about that, and I know you're never going to agree with us.
Some of you might.
Some of you might. But for those of you who don't agree with us, understand that we're evaluating everything day over day, like leading up to, with any hurricane, you got a little bit of notice. We're evaluating every single day what was going to be our best course of action. Go north, go south.
Stay put.
We were at the very southern end of it. Like always. There was never a chance that it was going to come right over top of us. We were always going to be on the south side. It's just how far south. And when you're talking about truck, trailer, all your worldly possessions and everything like that, you're evaluating things on a daily basis, trying to figure out, I don't want to lose everything, honestly.
Yeah.
And so if I can make the best situation work here, then I'm going to make that situation work. If I need to leave, I'm going to leave. And we made the best decision because
we knew we couldn't leave.
we survived, all of our stuff survived, and that's all we can hope for.
Now, I will say some of our camping neighbors and RV neighbors were not as fortunate. They lost everything because there was an unprecedented amount of tornadoes. It was a really, really scary day. But thankfully, at least where we were at, the people that we knew or knew of, they were not hurt. They didn't lose their lives. And that storm shelter came in clutch. So what had happened was, this was the craziest story. So we, they had started kind of the tornado warnings all throughout the day. Again, I say, we're from Texas. We know what the sky looks like when a tornado's about to drop. And so we were in the bathhouse. We were just hanging out. We wanted to make sure and stay safe. We had our pup with us. She was in the bathhouse as well with us. There was a few other people who stayed at the campground who also were hanging out. So we were getting really cozy. And all of a sudden, the tornado warnings just kind of all lifted.
Yeah.
And so we were like, wow, okay, this is great. So we were like, all right, we're going to be in this for the long haul. So a few of us ventured out of the storm shelter to go get provisions. So his back was hurting really bad. I went to get him some pain medicine, and then just some snacks, extra water, things like that.
And coffee.
And coffee.
And so if you follow us on TikTok, you will have heard the story of how you're not even wearing it.
It was on the charger right next to us. Here we go.
Put your coat in. There you go.
Coat is in, watch is on. It was right next to me. It was right here.
So, if you follow us on the social medias, you know the Apple Watch saved Kara's life.
It
So
did.
You should all be like, y'all all need to write into Apple and be like, thank you, because the Wandering RV Babe, the most important RV babe in the world,
You're biased.
maybe,
Maybe a little bit.
survived because of Apple.
Yeah, we're not sponsored by Apple or anything like that. But this was nuts. So
Sponsor us, Apple.
So we, ventured out to go get extra provisions. And in the clubhouse, we were like, man, it'd be really nice to have a good cup of coffee. So we brewed a pot of coffee, and there were some,
As you
ceramic
do.
coffee
As you
mugs that were up there. So grabbed some coffee, went back, and was good to go. Well, a couple minutes went by, and I had maybe had 2 sips of my coffee, and I looked down at my Apple Watch, did not have my phone with me or anything, and I saw, 3 minutes ago, a new tornado warning was just issued for our area. Let's all go back inside to the storm shelter.
Now, for the record, I was still in the bathhouse/tornado shelter. The reason for that was, like she said, I was in immense pain,
Yeah.
and I really couldn't do hardly anything at that moment.
Yeah. We found out a couple weeks later, he actually had to have emergency surgery on his back. So it wasn't just like I tore a muscle in my back
Yeah,
kind of thing.
no.
It was pretty gnarly injury. So anyway, so I noticed, there's a tornado warning. Let's go back into the bathhouse. Now, what I will say about this is I was just kind of moseying back into the bathhouse because the sky was clear. It actually wasn't really super windy. It had been windy earlier that day, but it wasn't really windy. It was fairly calm, and the sky didn't look like it typically does when a tornado hits. I get into the bathhouse though, maybe took 2 more sips of my coffee, maybe another minute passed, and then all of a sudden it hit, and when it hit, it was like that.
So, first, when anybody talks to you about like the noise, do you hear the freight train? Yes, you hear the freight train when it's nearby. When it's coming over top of your head, it's more like a freight train while you're taking off in an airplane and you feel the pressure change all at the same time, and it's like you're hearing the freight train outside of the airplane while you're taking off. That's what it really feels and sounds like. And when I felt that pressure change, I tell you what, my adrenaline kicked up. I grabbed her and took her into one of the bath stalls and just held on for dear life. I pulled a full-on twister move of like wrapping my arm around the metal bar, like trying to, okay, I've got her. And we were fine.
Yeah, we were okay. We tried to get as small as we could. We tried to get as low down to the ground as we could. We tried to hang on to it. The rail on the shower probably wasn't going to be sturdy enough, but it was what we could grab onto at the time.
It made you feel safe.
It did make you feel a little bit safer. So we grabbed onto that. There was debris flying everywhere. There were
Outside, not inside.
Well, inside though, like the rafters had all kinds of debris. That was just
like dust and stuff.
dust and stuff that was just falling on top of our heads. At one point, I looked up and there were some skylights above us, and I actually saw the skylight break and then just get sucked right out as this thing is just spinning over the top of our heads. It was the scariest thing that we have ever been through. But it only lasted, it felt like it lasted an eternity. It probably only lasted about 10 seconds.
I don't know if it's scarier than the time that I almost went off the side of an overpass.
Oh yeah, when you were 17, you're driving like a maniac?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a close call.
Yeah, it is a close call. Anywho.
Hey, Amazon package is here.
Oh,
Hey, look, it's for you.
it usually is.
I don't know if it's anything breakable.
Hopefully it wasn't. So in the aftermath, what we found was just craziness. Like I said, there were a lot of homes that were destroyed. There were a lot of RVs that were destroyed. Ours certainly had damage. A tree fell on the truck. So it's been a bit of a long road. Thankfully, neither one of our truck or our camper were totaled, but it did take about 3 months for us to get them back from the repair shop.
Yeah, keep in mind, this happened on October 9th. Actually, technically, I think the tornado hit on October 8th, or was it?
I think it was the 9th and the 10th.
Yeah, the tornado hit on the 9th. The hurricane didn't even hit till that
Like overnight.
The
hurricane was fine. Yeah, but it's taken us this long. It's early part of January of 2025, and we just now got both the camper and the truck back, and there's still some residual repairs on both that need to kind of be worked out.
Yeah, it's not over by a long shot.
No, but we are very, very thankful to be back in our home, back with our truck that tows our home, and we are very close to being ready to hit the road again.
Hit the road again.
And don't you look back, no, no more, no more, no more.
We went two totally different directions with that.
We both started singing different songs.
With all that in mind, starting... The dog just moved.
The dog just moved the camera.
Thanks. We are starting back up with our weekly show where we're going to be talking to you guys one-on-one about what's been going on for us. What's been going on in RV life, what's been going on with RV industry, everything that we can think of.
Tips, tricks, myths, and all of our fun stories so that you can learn from our mistakes and not repeat them yourself. So with that in mind, we actually have some lessons learned from this whole situation on what we learned and how you can avoid it in the future.
They can avoid it by not being in a hurricane.
Well, yeah, that's true. So yeah, if you can get out, you should get out.
But to get out, you're going to need to watch the weather very closely.
Yes, you are.
Because which direction you go, depending on where you're at. Like if you're on the western edge, northwestern edge of Florida and the hurricane's coming through, heading west is pretty easy. If you're on the southeastern edge, things are a little bit more complicated.
That's the other thing too is, we had a bit of a perfect storm all kind of compile on us at once. And that's something to watch out for. Sometimes shit just happens and you can't account for it, you can't plan for it, but what you can do is be prepared for plan B and plan C and plan D if necessary.
And have full-timer insurance. Really, full-timer insurance is very, very important. If you're a full-timer.
Yeah, if you full-time RV, full-timer insurance is out there. It is absolutely necessary to have it. I don't know how we would have done this without it.
I mean, we would have just had to give up.
Yeah, we would have had to have taken a big break from even doing RV life at all because our full-time insurance, now, it's not cheap, but it is absolutely worth it to have if you're going to do full-time RV life.
Yeah, now, whether or not they cancel our insurance after having to fill all of this, that's a whole different story. We'll follow up in the next couple of months.
Or hike those premiums up.
We'll keep an eye on it and we'll let you know what Progressive does to us.
Exactly. So far, they've been really great to work with. Couple of bobbles and bumps along the way, but what we found is if we stay on top of communication between them and the repair shops, it's gone fairly smoothly. The other thing that came in clutch in this whole situation was a battery bank.
Oh, yes. So I actually got a battery bank. It's actually back here.
Under the sink.
Under the sink. It's actually for the fridge because it's a residential fridge, as you can see. Runs off of standard 120 volt, whatever. I don't care what, at 110. I don't know. It runs off the inverter, which runs off of our batteries, which only gets me about 5 or 6 hours. So when we've had to boondock in the past, the fridge dies overnight, which is usually okay. For the most part, probably everything stays good. You really don't have to worry too much about it. But what the battery bank, which the fridge is plugged into, does is allows us to make sure we have a good 10 to 12 hours of solid, which actually came in handy back when we broke our suspension earlier this year.
It definitely did.
Because we were only 30 minutes down the road, couldn't find a campground to stay at, and so we had to boondock that night. But it wasn't like we were arriving at like 5 p.m. and just boondocking overnight. No, we arrived at like 1 and then had to boondock all the way till the next morning. And so, like, luckily we got, the solid, almost 12 hours out of it.
Yeah, because before, the fridge would just suck the battery dead. And the hard part with that is, yes, our food is pretty well going to stay good as long as we don't open the fridge. The problem, though, is that all of the power in the RV is then gone. So you can't pull the slides in, you can't pull the struts up, you can't hardly do anything until it charges back up. And even plugging it back into the truck is kind of like a trickle charge, so it takes a while. Not the best situation.
And this is the reason we bought the battery bank, but it ended up being really useful in this scenario because I didn't, because I couldn't lift at the time, unfortunately.
I just huffed it into the bathhouse.
Listen, she's a strong girl. She brought it into the bathhouse, and so we were able to plug in our phones, keep them charged. Everybody in the area was able to plug in their phones, keep them charged throughout the night because...
We lost power immediately when the tornado hit.
Yeah, the tornado hit at 4 p.m. The hurricane, I don't even think it made landfall until like 8 p.m. and then passed... The worst of it passed through our area at like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So most people's phones are like dying during this. We're all trying to keep up with weather. There's no power running anywhere. Now, we did get a generator up and going at one point.
Yeah, we did.
But we didn't want to have that running the entire time, especially when the hurricane winds started to hit. So we needed to be able to adjust and switch over, and everybody could start plugging into the battery bank.
Yeah, so that was super, super helpful as well. And then, of course, we've already talked about the Apple Watch and just in general being very, very weather aware.
Connected. I'm going to say connected.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
Because whether you have an Apple Watch or not, your phone is a very connected device already. Carrying your phone with you, having your phone with you. In the case of her going to the coffee, she didn't have the Apple Watch. Probably a good idea to have her phone with her so that way she knows, like, if there's a tornado warning.
Yeah, because I forgot to mention this, but the area that we were in the clubhouse that had the coffee was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So if I hadn't had my Apple Watch and I had stayed in there 2 minutes longer, I would have been caught up in that whole mess, which would not have been good.
So those are our tips and tricks for you. Now, avoiding the hurricane, obviously that's the number one thing. Avoiding those circumstances as best you can. We always talked about, like, hey, like, especially with a hurricane, you could have enough forewarning to get up and get out of there. And that's mostly true. And I still think that is 100% the best bet. But sometimes you gotta look at things and kind of analyze what is actually the best thing because... again,
circumstance has a lot to do with it, and your situation and all the variables need to be a factor in your decision making.
Yeah, you could 100% leave, get stuck in traffic, and now you're actually in the dead center rather than being on the outer edge, and that's always a concern. So just keep that in mind, that getting away is still number one priority, but sometimes you gotta adjust and plan around it.
And for things like tornadoes, for things like random thunderstorms or hailstorms or other types of random weather events that you could hit on the road doing full-time RV life, or even doing trips when you're going and you do the weekend warrior thing, that you really can't account for.
No.
So that's where knowing that you've got a storm shelter nearby, that's where planning in advance, having a tank full of gas, things like that are going to be really, really helpful.
And we called it out last week. We haven't done anything. We haven't done any research on them, but RVweather.com, SureRoute is their subscription service that they provide, but they also provide a ton of free resources to be able to look at everything that is all the different models that are out there. So I'm giving them another shout out this week because we're talking about weather and I think it's a really useful tool. We're going to be checking it out, exploring it, kind of experimenting with it ourselves, and maybe we even get somebody from them to show up on the show at one point.
Yeah. I've actually been using them all this week when there's been, a lot of that snowy weather that was hitting for parts of the country and things like that. And it was really, really comprehensive, and that was just on their free side, like before the paywall.
Yeah.
So it was really informative and kind of easy to read information. Plus, it really kind of helps to give some really good forecasts that are 3 to 10 days out that are fairly accurate. They're straight from NOAA. So really good stuff. I would highly recommend checking them out. Even if you just use their free version, it's going to be a helpful tool to use, especially with RV life.
I was really trying to think of a funny way to make a joke about Noah's Ark, weather, but I couldn't, so I just saying it what all ran through my head. It was funny in my head.
Thanks for joining us. This was fun. Let's do it again next week. Happy camping and okay, bye.
Bye.
You're a nerd.
You're a nerd. Why am I a nerd?
You're a nerd.
Why am I a nerd? I need to...
You're a weather nerd.
Maybe just a little bit.
Maybe just a little bit. How many weather apps do you have on your phone now? Be honest.
Well,
I have 2 still.
RVweather.com is not an app, so that one doesn't count.
Okay, all right.
But then I have My Radar,
Uh-huh.
Samsung Weather, Carrot Weather. I think one more that I don't know the name of.
Yeah, I think there's at least one more.
And then RVweather.com, you know.
You're a dork.
Actually, for the longest time, I actually had the tab open in my browser to go to the NOAA's website so I could pull all those maps up myself. And then I found out that RVweather.com was pulling them all in. And I was like, oh, that's a lot easier.
Like, that's really handy.
And cut. Ow. Why are your claps so loud?